December 14th at 6:30 p.m. Can we have the roll, please?
Greg Bellin is here.
And David Post is here. All of council's here. The mayor's here. The law director, the finance director's here. There is no audience participation. And I'm going to change, I'm going to ask that we make I'm going to make a motion to change the agenda to add, elect a chairman and a vice chairman. May I have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All right, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so the three members of the council voted in the affirmative. At this time, I'd like to make a motion to have Greg Bellin become the chairman of the finance committee. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
3 votes in the affirmative from the committee. At this time, Mr. Bellin will take over the meeting.
Thank you. Do we have to have a vice chair for this particular committee?
You should.
Yeah. All right, I'd like to nominate Bill Fury as vice chair of the finance committee. May I have a second?
I'll second that.
Mr. Post seconds. Any discussion? Call the roll. Greg Bellin, aye.
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 All right, that's 3 in the affirmative. Mr. Fury is the vice chair of the finance committee. At this point, I would like to look for a motion to approve the November 23rd, 2021 finance committee minutes. May I have a second, or may I have a motion, please?
I make a motion, we approve the minutes as submitted.
I'll second that.
Mr. Post seconds. Any discussion? All right, call the roll. Greg Bellin, aye.
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 All right,
3 in the affirmative.
3 to the affirmative. All right, next up on the agenda is a discussion about the Ohio Checkbook program. Sarah.
Hang on just a second. We'll get the presentation up here. Thanks, Mark. So at last month's meeting, we had the Ohio Checkbook folks come up and present to us a site that the city would...
A little louder, just a little bit.
Is it only Shannon's? My microphone doesn't work all the time. Okay, sorry about that. At last month's Finance Committee meeting, we had the Ohio Checkbook folks up to present the city's possible site if we wanted to participate in the program, and they ran through a couple of examples of looking up a vendor and what the different funds look like, you know, if you remember the different graphs that it had. And I just wanted a motion from Finance Committee on whether we want to go ahead and participate in the program or not. Last month after the presentation, we had wanted to wait until, you know, we had a new member of council coming on, new Finance Committee, to see what everybody's feelings were.
I apologize, but I missed that meeting, so I did not see the presentation. I've heard of this vehicle for a few years now, primarily from Lauren Senstock and Mike Turrell. Is there a fee for this, or is it free?
It's free.
How does it differ from what we currently do with the information we have on our multiple websites?
It differs from the information we already provide in that there's a little bit more detail in the file that we upload to the Ohio Checkbook. You can dig down into individual vendors, individual payments, as opposed to the reports that we put out online. But when the Ohio Checkbook people were here, they did say that we are doing a great job at the information that we are providing online and how transparent we are already being. So this would just be another tool in the toolbox, if you will, on what the residents could go in and look and see.
Yeah, Mr. Fury, if I may, I think, to Sarah's point, I think we are doing a wonderful job. And in fact, the folks from the Ohio Checkbook group gave us, you know, some pretty substantial praise for what we are doing. That being said, I think we're one of the only communities around that is not participating in this particular program. And I know Sarah and I had this conversation. I think at this point, it's not really adding any additional work or substantial work, and Sarah, correct me if I'm wrong, to her staff, which is what I was most worried about. And at this point, I see no reason not to. We're not hiding anything. We're already producing that documentation anyhow. So, my opinion.
I have a question. Mayor, remember when Karen House was here? And we talked about the Ohio checkbook? And she didn't want it. She supported it, but she didn't want it for the city of Twinsburg. Is that why we didn't get it when she was here?
Well, I know at the time it was a new program, and so we were kind of waiting just to kind of watch it and see how it was going to evolve and what was going to happen to it. And I think her main concern at the time was just, there's data that doesn't really have any kind of backstory to it in terms of how it's presented. So you're still going to have some of that. I think we are very transparent with all of our finances and what we do, and I don't know that if Karen was sitting in that seat today that she would maybe have the same feeling about it, but I can't speak for her. But again, I think watching the program over the last really 4 or 5 years, I don't have any concerns about being on it. Again, I think if someone roots down for adversarial purposes, they're going to come up with what they want to come up with, whether we're on a higher checkbook or not. If someone, is just looking for basic information, and I just don't know how much traffic it'll actually get, to be honest with you. But we can put it out there, and again, I'm not concerned about it. So.
And it is just a piece of the puzzle. You can see that a check was cut. You can't see why that check was cut. You would still have to inquire and get more information. And it doesn't show any revenue data. So you'd still have to go to the reports that we already provide. That's one of the things that they mentioned about, our transparency is that we have that stuff out there.
Is there payroll records online? And if the information that you're concerned with in the past, redacting addresses, other?
Yeah, they went over that. There's no individual payroll information. You can see the salaries and wages line item expense, but that's it. You can't see the individual people.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, so Sarah, you're needing a motion out of finance to send it to council?
I think that just finance could do it. I don't think that we would need legislation at
Okay.
council
All right.
to participate in the program.
Okay, I will make a motion then of the finance committee to move forward with the Ohio checkbook program. May I have a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Fury seconds. Any further discussion?
No.
All right. Mr. Post?
Aye.
Mr. Fury?
Yes?
Yes. So that's 3-0. Thank you, Sarah. I appreciate it. Next up on the agenda is the 2021 year-end appropriation amendment.
So this is on legislation tonight, and I just wanted to take a moment and go through what was on, because it's quite a few line items. At the end of the day, I think the important piece to take away is that we have a net positive impact on the budget of over $1 million. So we are adding revenues to the original budget. We were very conservative, especially at the fitness center and the golf course, on what those numbers might look like because of the pandemic. So we are bumping those numbers up to where we actually are for 2021. And we are reducing some expenses that we had talked about previously, like the healthcare. This was our first year being self-insured. We had overestimated what that might cost us just because we didn't know if it was going to be a good year or a bad year. We ended up having a good year, so we can reduce some of that budget that we had in there. Same thing with the transfers to the enterprise funds, to the golf course fund and the fitness center fund. We had more transfer there than we needed because those funds ended up doing a little better for themselves than we had planned in the original budget. So if we want to go through them individually, we can, but I have some summary there on the slide, but I just wanted to make sure Finance Committee didn't have any questions on the appropriation amendments since it is on emergency tonight.
I don't particularly have any questions. Mr. Fury, Mr. Post, do you have any questions?
I do not at this time.
Anybody else on council? I'm sorry, Bill.
No, I do not. I apologize. I was talking to Sam for a second. But no, I don't have any questions. This is standard what we do at the end of the year. So
I do have a question.
This is year end. There was some talk about with some of the American funds that we might do a program for small businesses in Twinsburg. I don't know where that stands, but that would not be on this, that would be on 2022.
Correct. There's no American
Okay,
Rescue
so you put the
Plan.
CERT trailer in on 21 and not 22.
We put the CERT trailer in on 2021 by request of council. We wanted to make sure we had that money now so they can get moving on that. Most likely, we'll cut the check next year, but we can set aside the money this year and have it there ready to go.
I have no other questions, and thank you very much.
Rest of council, I'm sorry.
Yeah, actually, I do have a question. So when you said that the amount of money that was spent this year was less than anticipated, when you created the budget for next year, you based that off this year then, correct?
So.
Or
when-
did you keep it at that level because it just happened to be a good year and that you want to anticipate?
Right.
Right?
Well, that's the magic of budgeting, right? We have to
Right.
try to plan out
Yes.
what's going to happen next year. There's, I don't like the word guess, we estimate maybe. But so for next year, that's one of the reasons that we have been doing a temporary budget, especially recently with the pandemic, because we just don't know where things are going to be, especially on the revenue side of things. So we've been doing these temporary budget because that buys us time to close out the books, really see what happened in 2021 or whichever year we're closing out, and then do that permanent budget that has a little bit, hopefully, better estimates that we can go off of.
Anything else?
No, that,
Okay.
it's perfect.
Anybody else on council? Questions?
Magic.
So David, just for your knowledge, once we budget amount, because I looked into this the last few years, we only typically spend between 93 and 96% of what's budgeted. So we're typically under those amounts, and at the end, we do some transfers just to balance some things. So some things cost more or went over what we thought, and some things are under.
Less than intentionally.
And Sarah's notoriously conservative on revenues. She seems to always want to be conservative and be surprised with more money versus being realistic and then hitting the numbers. So we have a difference of
I
opinion
don't
there.
think he meant it that way, Sarah.
My income
It's
tax
actually a
revenue was
compliment to you.
pretty close this year.
It's okay.
You know, for
Just-
being a
just a
pandemic
number
year,
thing.
it wasn't too terribly conservative.
So, and the reason we're doing a temporary budget is we could do a permanent budget now and have this done, but we are allowed by the state to do a temporary budget and then do a final budget by March 31st. So, and we've done it both ways. We've done it where we
Have that
stopped
permanent.
it, yes, with Karen, we were
And
doing
this
it
is
that
good because
way.
there's so many unknowns right now.
I understand that, that's why, and I'll shut up because Dave's
right?
making fun of me over there. He's laughing at me,
Well, there's probably a lot of inside jokes going on that I'm just not
not
aware
that
of.
I'm aware of, you just couldn't hear. Yeah.
Okay, so.
That's okay. I saw who you were working with out in Catalina, man. You're gonna miss me.
So at the end of the day, we had more revenue than we budgeted, and we had less expenses than we budgeted in the year 2020. Thank you very much. Any other comments from council or the finance committee?
No.
Okay. All right, next up then is the 2022 temporary appropriations. Any final questions?
Right, so I just have a copy up here of the summary page that you guys all have in your book that we gave you. I just wanted to see if there was any other questions that Finance Committee or Council has, because we do have that legislation on emergency tonight for passage. And I would ask Finance Committee if there are no further concerns to make a motion to recommend to Council to pass the budget tonight.
So the grand total line there is a deficit of just shy of $1 million, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And what is for somebody that does not look at these numbers all day, every day, what does that mean?
So the reason that we have a just under $1 million deficit for 2022 is because we are using funds that we have built up in certain areas next year. One of those being the American Rescue Plan Fund. So we received almost $1 million in that fund this year, but we're not going to spend it till next year. So technically next year's budget, we're overspending my $1 million out of that fund because we received it the previous year. We built up a balance. Now we're going to draw down that balance and use it.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions, concerns?
Good question.
Okay. All right. That being said, I would like to make a motion that the Finance Committee recommends the 2022 temporary appropriations to council later this evening. May I have a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Fury seconds. Any further discussion from Finance?
No.
I'd like to make just one comment myself.
Yes, sir.
On this page. So even though it shows that we're in a $1 million deficit there, you know, back to the 96, 97% of what we're doing, I think that we'll be fine. The unknown of next year, more so than any other year, is how do we deal with people that don't pay taxes in Twinsburg? Or how do we get taxes from people like me who work in Twinsburg? I mean, that's what I'd be worried about. But other than that, and also, if you look at your statement of cash that they sent you today, you'll see that we have unexpended balances of about $32 million today. So, you know, when we have things that we're gonna have to spend money on, but, you know, being off by $1 million when you're sitting on 32 there and 15 in your general fund, and again, it's unlikely that we'll spend everything in that budget. And that'll be quiet now. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Plus, as it was explained to me by Sarah, I believe, Sarah, tell me if I'm wrong, there's still discussions in the first 3 months because these are temporary.
Right. We will start discussing the permanent budget first meeting in 2022. I usually have the enterprise fund folks come in January. We do fitness center, and while they're there for fitness center, we do parks and rec and the golf course, and then February, March, one or the other, we do engineering, building, those folks, and the other one we do safety services.
Sarah, when do you estimate you'd have the close for the year? Because that'll really be the scorecard of what were our total expenses and where were our total revenues. So that's probably, what, the end of January?
Right. My goal would be to have the books closed out before our January meeting, but at least we'll be set to go for the enterprise funds, because those will be up first.
Anything else? All right. So motion on the floor, Mr. Fury second. Mr. Post?
Aye.
Mr. Fury?
Yes.
And I vote yes. So 3-0, the temporary appropriations will be recommended to council.
Thank you.
Next up on the agenda is comments or questions. Mr. Post?
Any comments or questions? Move chapters?
Comments or questions?
Oh, no, I am good, thank you. I am looking forward to being on the Finance Committee, and I'm learning a lot, and I'm excited for it.
Thank you. Mr. Fury?
I'm good, thank you.
Any other members of council? Mayor? Mr. Maestros? Sarah? No. All right, next up then is miscellaneous. We have an update on the digital sign in front of City Hall.
And I do have one other miscellaneous item real quick. I had talked with Shannon, because we have a couple new faces on council, and I'm sorry, am I overriding you?
He asked you, and you said no.
No, that was under comments and questions. This is miscellaneous.
That's
This is miscellaneous.
I'm kidding.
No, I have two miscellaneous items, just only slides for one. Would council be interested in a finance kind of government accounting crash course? Not necessarily just for the folks coming on, but anybody that wants a refresher or an understanding of how fund accounting works and all the good things that go into government accounting. And I just wanted to see Finance Committee and council in general's interest in that. And then I would work with Shannon to plan a day if there would be interest for that.
I am.
I would be.
Okay.
Yeah.
I will work with Shannon to come up with a date.
Okay.
Okay. So the digital sign for City Hall. So normally when something is over $25,000, council likes us to go out, get a few bids, bring it back to you for review, and choose the lowest and best price. Not necessarily the full bid process, but just get a couple quotes. So what I wanted to bring to your attention is that we tried very hard to bring you 3 quotes. We contacted several companies. Don McCabe, he emailed, he called, he got after these folks. We ended up only getting 1 quote back from Fast Signs that I have listed there for that $32,735 number for a 4x8 double-sided digital message. sign, and I just wanted to present that to you guys and see if you were still interested in moving forward on the digital sign, given that we were unable to get multiple quotes, unfortunately. But truly, efforts were made
What
to
was the
try to get
rationale for
people.
not giving a quote?
We even had a couple people that came out, and when they went back away, we never heard from them again. I think it's kind of the same thing that a lot of people are running into, having trouble getting anything.
Yeah.
It's just these companies are overwhelmed, they don't have enough people, and we just weren't hearing back. But
Sure, do we have
the budget was $35,000, so the quote is under what we set aside for the project.
Mayor, do we have a responsibility to go get additional quotes, or we've made the effort. I just want to make sure that we're.
Yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead. I was just gonna say, the process that we put in place is anything over 50,000, we have to put out the bid. Under 50, we had this two-tiered, below 25 and between 25 and 49.99.
Right.
So the idea was to get multiple quotes for council, but we've run into this before. Sometimes we've had one or two instead of the three. We'd like to get three, but.
Okay. Council, is it? Yes,
I have a
Mr.
question.
Studi.
Do we have to do the brickwork and the foundation work for this
Yeah.
35,000, or is that included?
We have that planned for in-house. We've been in contact with.
So this is just the sign itself. We've got
It's
to do
just the sign.
additional work to this.
Right, yeah,
So
we've
it's more
talked
than-
with Gary and Ski and Chris about what they would need to build the base, and they've been working with Shannon on what that might look like, and also running whatever power we need out there too.
Mr. Fury?
No, it's double-sided, so we were gonna do it perpendicular to the road so you could see both sides. At one point, I thought we talked about a two-sided sign, two singles, so I like this better.
Would this be
similar to
the one across the street right here?
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think we looked into the V-shaped one, and I think the price went so high because it was,
Last time I heard
signs.
about
Two
this, it was
screens.
two signs and it was a V and,
right.
okay.
Any other comments? Is council, finance committee, are we comfortable with this? Do we want to try to go get additional quotes?
I mean, the city's bought at least one of these before, so,
From this vendor?
no, for this style.
What did we pay before?
But I was wondering, have we been with this vendor before for?
We actually have two.
We bought two of them.
We have one up at Station 2, and then we have.
And we got one across the street. Yeah. So we don't have, what's
I
the
mean,
comparison?
I want to say they were in the
20 years ago.
25 to 28,000 range, but
That sounds right. I'd have to go look them up again. I had looked them up before, and I think it was between 25 and 30, but it was years ago.
Right.
Too, so.
Yeah, the newest one is the one up on Fire Station 2, right? And that's already, how many years old?
That would be about 15 years
Yeah.
old.
And you think that was how much?
I want to say it was
27,
25 to 28, if I remember correctly, but I.
That probably was also the stonework though, right? Included that too, probably.
Well, we had to redo stonework up at Station 2. It was falling apart too when we replaced that sign. And, the fitness center one we built from ground up.
Right.
It was, we plotted in the field there, so. This one, actually, the plan is to keep the same location, just we have to, the brick is falling
Right.
down.
I'm personally comfortable that we reached out, we tried, we did what we could do, and, but certainly, Mr. Fury, Mr. Post, rest of council, comments, questions?
I'm fine with this.
I feel better knowing that the last one we put up is, what are we talking, $7,000 less?
Mhm.
And we're talking how many years later?
15.
So, yeah, initially I'm not comfortable with it, but knowing that information,
You okay?
yeah.
Okay.
My question was, did we use this vendor before?
I would have to look and see who we used in the past, and I can get you the names of the vendors and how much we paid. I can send that out to council.
It'd be interesting to find that out to see, do we go to those vendors again this time? Are they the same vendors? That's interesting.
I'm not positive, but I believe that one of the vendors that we reached out to is who we used in the past.
Oh, okay.
And that's one of the people that we kept calling and
Just didn't hear from.
yeah,
You can only do so much.
Right.
yeah, we tried.
I agree with Sam, it seems very reasonable, based on,
Okay.
That's all we paid in the past.
Okay, so I think it sounds like we're good.
Okay.
Okay, that being said, the next meeting is January 25th, 2022, and we will now adjourn the Finance Committee meeting at 6:54 PM.